Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today for our webinar, where we're going to be comparing some of the Emlid GNSS receivers. Today, we're going to be looking at the Emlid Reach RX, the Reach RS2 Plus, and the Reach RS3. Before we get into the nitty-gritty on these products, however, we're going to have a practice to make sure that everyone's familiar with doing polls. So for the first poll, I'm curious, what's motivated our audience to join us today? Rightio, so we've got 2/3 of the audience existing Emlid users, and then it's an even split between the rest in terms of buying Emlids, researching RTK GNSS generally, and curiosity. So thank you very much for participating in the poll. Looks like most of us have mastered that technology. Fabulous. And I'm going to move on to an introduction for Igor, who's joined us today. So Igor is founder, co-owner and CEO of Emlid. Welcome to today's webinar, Igor.
Thanks for having me, Al, and thanks everyone for joining today.
So I've known Igor since 2017 when I shared some other people's curiosity about, you know what, this Emlid stuff, it might just do what I need and it's going to save me heaps of money and finally make it affordable for me to access RTK GNSS technology. And that was certainly my journey back in 2017. And I went, you know what, I'm going to take a punt on these guys. And if it works and it's going to save me a whole lot of dough. And if it doesn't work, I haven't burnt much dough at all. And it was actually prior to the first Emlid Reach RS being launched. So they were taking pre-orders. So I put my money on the line, waited a few months, and sure enough, my receivers came in the mail and I was so excited. I got home at 9 o'clock at night, pulled my receivers out of their boxes, figured out how to update the firmware and configure them. And by about 1 a.m., because I'm a slow learner, I was out on a benchmark and I had my base set up on a benchmark and I took my rover and went across to another benchmark on the other side of town and it was receiving corrections from the base and I could see that I was within 17 millimeters horizontally. I can't remember my verticals, but it wasn't much more. And I was like, oh my God, this stuff actually works. And I was so excited that within a week, I'd got back in touch with Emlid and built a relationship with Emlid, bringing their brand to Australia. And here we find ourselves around 5 or 6 years later. So thank you very much for joining us today, Igor. Your depth of knowledge is obviously, unparalleled globally, I would say, on this stuff. So we'll definitely benefit from your expertise during the Q&A session. And as we compare the different products, please feel free to jump in and add some more information where you see the opportunity. So before we get stuck into the nitty-gritty, we're going to have another poll. Now it's kind of curious because I feel like we've answered this one a little bit with the first poll that we launched, who has first-hand experience with Emlid gear. I'm guessing the rates won't change too much in the last 10 minutes. But if I could run this poll, I think it provides an opportunity for the extra people that have joined us over the last few minutes to also share their familiarity with Emlid. And there's a subsidiary question. And we can see that 3/4 of the audience have got experience with Emlid products and 42% of the audience are using Emlid Flow with their hardware for their fieldwork, and 58% of our users are using alternative software. And I suppose that just really highlights the fact that Emlid does not try and enforce some sort of a closed vendor ecosystem with their solutions. They are quite versatile and their products do allow you to export those RTK corrected positions to alternative softwares, most commonly using NMEA over Bluetooth, but there are other pathways for that as well. So we'll stop sharing that poll now and perhaps take a look at some of the hardware that allows that capability. Just get my own little Zoom thing out of the way. Okay, so as I indicated earlier, we're going to compare the Reach RX, the Reach RS2, I'm going to draw a little plus next to that, and the Reach RS3. So let's kick off with the Reach RX. The Reach RX is a purist device. It's an N-trip rover. It's designed specifically to consume corrections from the internet. It has no integrated radios except for Bluetooth. It connects with your phone via BLE and consumes internet corrections from your phone, using your phone as the data service to the internet. And therefore, you don't need a base. So this makes it really simple and easy to use for people that are collecting information sporadically. They're not necessarily working with this hardware day in, day out. They might be asset managers or archaeologists or people that need to collect precise positioning from time to time, and they need a simple and intuitive workflow to be able to do that. So with the Reach Emlid RX, you literally turn it on. Here's one I prepared a little earlier. So you turn it on, and by the time you turn it on and go into your phone, unlock your phone, open up the Emlid Flow app and connect to that receiver, it started to consume the N-trip corrections from your phone. And by the time you're ready to collect your first point, it will have a fix already. One of the very popular features of this receiver is the embedded LED lights. They're not particularly visible on this one because it's not on, but you can see in the pictures that I'm sharing, in the photo of the guy holding it, there's a green light, and that indicates that it's got a fix. And there's a white light and the one up in the top right-hand corner, and that means that it's in single mode. It's not yet receiving corrections. So simple and easy to use, fast to connect to. Hang on a sec. I've just been told that my whole slideshow is not working.
Hey, Alan, meanwhile, while you're sorting this out,
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention that your story where you took a leap of faith and decided to adopt Emlid and bring it to Australia. So I think it really resonates with many of our early adopters. And this is what we hear a lot in user interviews, where we hear the story that I looked at it and I couldn't believe that it's possible to achieve this level of accuracy at this cost. But then I decided, yeah, whatever. I just give it a go. It's not a lot of money. Like if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if it does, then it could save me so much. And then they get it, and they end up being really happy with the product. And I mean, especially now, I mean, everything is so much more polished compared to what you have received back in the days. And yeah, so but we still hear these stories, and I'm really excited that more and more people believe in what we're doing and adopt Emlid into their workflow, just as you did.
Thank you. And you know,
you were just ahead of the curve.
Yeah, back in 2017. And you know, the funny thing is that just before this webinar kicked off, I took a call from one of our customers, and I had Igor on hold, you know, in Zoom, waiting for this thing to kick off. And this customer's like, and I'm like, I've got the CEO of Emlid on the other line. Is there anything you want to say? And he goes, yeah, I really love that gear. And I'm proud that I did the research and I found it online, and I thought we're going to take a leap of faith with this. And I'm so proud that I did that for my organization, because it's been such a game changer for us. So yeah, I think there are a lot of people that, you know, can sense that it's got that potential and take that leap of faith and are really happy with the choice that they've made. All right, so now that I'm actually sharing my screen, that's a rookie error. So this is the Reach RX that we're talking about. I was talking about the green light that you can see in the image on the left-hand side of your screen. And that is showing that Reach RX is in a fixed state. And where the Reach RX is in float, that's going to be orange. And where it's a single, it's going to have a white light there. So intuitive, simple to use, and it supports that NMEA output that we talked about earlier, so that you can broadcast your RTK corrected position to a third-party application running on your phone or tablet, or even Windows device, to enable you to collect data in an alternative application. Amazingly, these really tiny, lightweight 250-gram receivers also have a 16-hour battery that is charged simply using a USB cable. Okay, Ray, somewhere we've got Ray online, and Ray is one of our dealers in Australia, So it's important to declare that. But Ray is also a surveyor, runs a survey firm, and does a variety of terrestrial, drone, and remotely operated vehicle surveys for bathymetry across Australia. And if Ray's here and unmuted,
I am.
There we go. Ray's there. And Ray, what's your experience with the RX, mate?
We I guess slightly utilize it in a bit of an unorthodox situation from normal aspects, but with the cadastral set out that we do, and GCP placement for drones, and also putting it on the boat, which is the unorthodox situation. We currently run an M2 Plus on the boat, and we utilize the RX on the boat as well as a secondary system, predominantly. And it sounds silly, but the lights, actually we can see it from quite a distance away at night time, so we know whether it's actually in a fix or a float. So especially up and down in the Brisbane River here, where we're based. So it has got a lot of good aspects to it, and it's very, very stable. That's what I can say about it, is that it's just as stable as any other the bigger products on the Emlid line. So yeah, we really enjoyed it. It's been a great addition.
Yeah, we're running the Emlid RX on the boat at night, and it's red when it's no, it's not red at all. It's only ever green. So
no, white,
orange,
and green,
and that sort of thing.
No, it hasn't caused confusion, but it has caused some people from the banks to sort of wonder what's going on, especially when they see some lights going up the river, and don't really know why there's lights very close to the waterline. But it basically, with the Bluetooth, we could just connect it straight to the computer with on board, and it integrates seamlessly with the hydrographic software. So it's really good in that aspect, that we can essentially quickly take it off and mount it if at will, and run two if we like, front and back of the boat. So yeah, it's been very, very good on that aspect for us.
It really is great in that. And we talked about the NMEA output, and I know that one of the other viewers of this webinar today is Anthony Johnston from Access Detection, and he imports and distributes Impulse Radar into Australia, and recently worked with Impulse Radar to integrate the Emlid Reach RX into the Impulse Radar solution, so that they're consuming precise positioning and doing it all wirelessly. So obviously it's running off its own internal battery, it's getting a correction externally via wireless, and it's broadcasting its own RTK corrected position down to the ground penetrating radar controller wirelessly as well. So a very tidy solution. Thank you very much, Ray. We'll come back to you in a little bit, Ray.
No problem.
In the meantime, please mute yourself. So, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do now is yet another poll. This time, I would love to know who among you consume N-Trip services to get RTK corrections for your GNSS gear. Do you rely on N-Trip services? Sometimes, always, never? Or do you tend to prefer other solutions, like setting up your own base over an existing benchmark? Or I think if you set up your own base and you use Emlid's free N-Trip caster, the Emlid caster, to broadcast a correction from your base to your RX or RS2 Plus or RS3, you can tick the box as using an N-Trip service, because that is an N-Trip service. It just happens to be yours for free instead of a paid one. Other examples of N-Trip services include the free National AusCore service by Geoscience Australia, which has recently massively densified its network. And there are other services like Hexagon's SmartNet. Okay, we're still seeing a couple of responses roll in on this one. Curiously, no one has yet responded that they never use N-Trip services. And I think we can end this poll now. We've stopped seeing responses. And once again, share the results.
I wanted to go a bit back to Ray's story, and first of all, thank him for sharing this. And I think this is really the first time someone used an RX on a boat, to my knowledge. And I think that that's a really, really smart move. And it's really cool how one device can be used between your bathymetry boat, your ground penetrating radar, if we talk about impulse radar, about the impulse radar integration. And then you can also use that to shoot GCPs, and it's all like one device. You can just mount it on different gear. I think that's really powerful. Sort of having this high precision core for all of your applications out there. So that's I think really cool.
Yeah, and I think, from my perspective, it's also the simplicity of the device and the relative affordability of it compared to so many other solutions on the market that really expose RTK GNSS for mass adoption outside of industries that consume it day in, day out. So if we need to have it in a asset manager's car or a plumber's car, I know Ben Minatoli from Geelong Cable Locators reckons that every plumber and electrician should have one of these to map and to locate services when they're digging holes and burying their own infrastructure. So yeah, versatile, affordable, and easy to use for people that don't consider themselves highly technical. So moving right along, the next receiver that we want to look at is the Reach RS2 Plus. So the Reach RS2 Plus is capable as both a base or a rover, and that thanks to the integrated LoRa radio. And it also has an integrated an integrated LTE modem that allows you to operate in Australia even when the 3G network is shut down. So with those two communication pathways, the LoRa radio or the LTE modem, you can consume corrections from another source, and you can also use those pathways to broadcast corrections from these units as a base in real time as well. So the Reach RS2 also has onboard memory to allow you to log raw data, and you can export that in common formats like RINEX and run that through free online post-processing services such as the AusPOS PPP service that allows you to leave the receiver in one location, measure its height above a mark that perhaps you've just installed, and post-process that log to determine a precise coordinate for the mark that you've set up on top of. And that obviously allows you to then do long-term RTK sessions using that point as a base. And there's some quite sophisticated PPK workflows that we do where we will deploy to a mine site with no existing infrastructure, establish a benchmark, set up the Reach RS2 Plus on top of that benchmark, broadcast corrections to our rover, but not really use them, use the stop-go survey feature with Emlid Studio to collect that information and to then post-process the location of the base, to use that post-process location and the RINEX of the base and the RINEX of the rover to post-process the locations that we've collected with the rover, and then to use that same RINEX log from the base and the known coordinates of the base to post-process drone data as well. So incredibly powerful and versatile. So it has 16 gigabytes of onboard memory, which will allow you to collect, Igor, I'm going to defer to you on this. I think it's at 1 hertz, it's like months of data. Can you just clarify that for me? Or you don't know?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on how often you log your data and which systems, but I think, yeah, you can pretty much log half a year of raw data.
Yeah. And so, you don't need to be too scared about, do I have enough memory on board my device to go out and do another 12-hour session? Once that memory fills up, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Igor, but it will start to delete the oldest files on the receiver so that you can continue to record new data if you ever do get around to filling it up.
Yeah, and it really depends on how you set it up. So basically, that's what it can do, or it can stop logging.
Okay, thank you very much. And moving on now to the Reach RS3. So the Reach RS3 is the very latest of Emlid's receivers. It was launched just a couple of months ago, and it has all of the same features as the RS2. But wait, there's more. it also contains a factory calibrated inertial measurement unit, and that supports its tilt compensation capability. And there's a number of key benefits that come from having tilt compensation in your receiver. So the first is the ability to improve the sky view by getting the receiver away from the outline of a building, or, away from, the trunk of a tree or whatever else that you're mapping up close. It also allows you to enhance safety by accessing points that are difficult to access and maintain, or impossible to access and maintain a vertical, perfectly leveled receiver over the top of. And it also allows you to boost productivity. So you can move a lot faster because you're spending less time leveling your receiver. And nowhere is that more apparent than when you're conducting set out and trying to mark out 400 points a day. So I know already in Australia, despite it only being in the market for a couple of months, that we've got some really happy customers here that are getting fantastic results and are amazed at the increase in productivity that they're seeing over the Reach RS2 hardware that they've used previously. In other bonuses, the Reach RS3 also contains an integrated UHF receiver. So this allows the RS3 to receive trim torque corrections from 410 to 470 megahertz. So if you're going to an existing site, whether that's a construction site or a mine site, and there's some survey infrastructure already in place, broadcasting corrections in trim torque, then you've got the opportunity to consume those corrections and get to work without having to set up another base or to find another pathway to consume corrections. And it allows you to use, effectively the same datum for your surveys as is being used for the other survey work that's being conducted on site by other personnel. Emlid were also able to improve the chemistry of the battery and the performance of the firmware in the Reach RS3 to extend the RTK performance for the Reach RS3 to 18 hours. And whilst that can be with the IMU on, of course, if you're not planning to use the IMU, you will optimize your battery by not having it on when you're not requiring it. So that summarizes all of the key features of the Reach RS3. Ray is going to talk us through some of his experiences using the Reach RS2 Plus and the Reach RS3 shortly. But before we jump there, Igor, this is your newest baby. Is there anything you want to say about the Reach RS3 at this point?
Well, for sure, everyone is really, everyone I know among our customers and in the industry in general, we're really excited to hear the news about the Reach RS3. We are really able to develop the tilt compensation technology to a level where it's really seamless, it's really accurate, and it's really easy to use. So all those and really affordable. So all kind of those signature Emlid features, like making things really easy to use, really affordable, and really seamlessly integrated. So we were able to develop the whole IMU tech inside the company. So basically everything from the chip level up. And that really allowed us to provide this smooth user experience for our customers. Basically what we have right now is that the IMU tilt compensation is so accurate that you get very minimal accuracy loss when tilting. And it mostly comes from just, and mostly depends on what kind of sky view you are getting. So are you tilting away from an obstacle or towards an obstacle? And then depending on that, your accuracy may vary. But in general, it's very, very close to the accuracy you would be getting without tilt compensation. And I think it's a great achievement. And it really boosts productivity because you don't really have to think about that sort of how much accuracy am I losing if I enable tilt. And every unit is individually characterized at the factory. So we have special jigs to calibrate them over a range of orientations and temperatures and everything. So you can be sure that it will perform no matter if it's a really hot climate, it's a really cold climate. You will perform just the same. And I mean, there is a lot of technical innovation inside to make sure that you never have to think about it. And that's something we really, really focus on to kind of hide all the complexity behind a very simple user interface and just make sure that the equipment gets out of the way and you can focus on what you're doing.
Awesome. Now, another thing for people that aren't familiar with using tilt, I understand there's a recommendation if you're using tilt, don't use a bipod. Like, fair enough, if you've got the IMU turned off and you're not using tilt, use a bipod to keep your pole level and steady. But if you're using tilt, the positioning will actually benefit from a bit of movement when you're occupying a point. Can you expand on that?
So in general, so the RS3, we use movement to understand where the north is. So the way this works is it analyzes the motion, and it looks at the motion in terms of like what GNSS is telling it, like how it's moving, and the internal IMU, and try to match this different frames of reference to calculate, okay, where is the north? And this is the most complicated part of tilt compensation, like figuring out where north is.
Right.
So yeah, it does rely on motion. It can sustain certain periods of static or very little movement, but it really works best when you use it naturally. So you are walking around, staking out points or collecting points, and sort of this movement helps it stay aligned, and it will automatically notify if you sort of have been keeping it static for too long. But yeah, it's really recommended that when using tilt, you don't stay static for too long. You don't mount it on a bipod. And I think one of the main benefits of using bipods is that you can actually eliminate the shaking of your hand when making the measurements, so you can be sure that the receiver is really steady. But the IMU can actually compensate for that. So there is really very limited, or I should say, there is no gain from using a bipod with a tilt compensated receiver, and it's actually better to shorten the averaging time. So, like, you can make measurements really quickly, like just 1 second shots, 1 epoch shots. 5 second shots, maybe, if you want to be really sure. And basically the handshaking while you're measuring the point is compensated by IMU, so it doesn't really affect the accuracy. And that's why we really don't recommend using a bipod or mounting a tilt compensated, or even on a tripod, right? That's something you definitely shouldn't do. Just like measure things naturally, and everything will work beautifully.
Awesome. I'm sure my shoulders will be forever grateful that they can shed another couple of kilos when I'm trudging across a mine site. Yeah. Thank you. So, Ray, we're going to bounce back to you and hear from you about how you've been using the RS2 Plus and now the RS3, and what your thoughts are on those products.
Well, what more can you say? But game changer, really. From the other products that we've used out in the marketplace, and coming across to Emlid, number of years ago, the products have done nothing but get better for us. They've, with the addition to Emlid Flow and the RS2 initially. It's served as a base station for everything, for the boat, the aircraft, the cadastral pickup, placing GCPs, just everything, coming back to a base that we could set up, or using cores network with the cell signals. So it was a very big addition to the way that we captured points, and the equipment that and cost point for the equipment, and just simply the runtime. A lot of other receivers out there, you're changing batteries every 4 hours or every 2 hours or something. You can set a base going and come back a day later and it's still ticking over, collecting Rhinex data. So for the RS2, it was magical. Then with the RS3 now, that's even better, and you can see the image there where I'm standing on top of a concrete pole, collecting that GCP coordinate with the RS2. Now I don't have to do that, which keeps OH&S a whole lot happier. that I'm not climbing up on concrete poles or concrete
I'm looking
cubes
at that.
anymore.
Yeah, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, like, it's not quite a permanent survey mark, but it's a semi-permanent ground control point. Looks like a whole
Yeah,
cubic meter of concrete there.
yeah, it is basically a cubic meter of concrete.
Yeah, and so climbing
and
up on
you
top
know,
of that is potentially dangerous when you're working for multinational firms that have these big lumps of concrete with ground control targets painted on them. They don't really want you climbing up on top of those.
no,
Getting up on them with your gear is always awkward too, I imagine.
that's right. And just standing there, for 10, 20 seconds, collecting it, you're sort of wondering whether you're going to fall backwards or whatever. But the RS3, we don't even need to climb up on it anymore. We could just stick the pole up there and let it wave around in the wind and collect the point, no problem at all.
So that's delivering on two of those
it,
promises, both safety and improved productivity. You're
absolutely.
not spending time up there position averaging. You're not having to spend time clambering up and down. You're operating in a safer manner. Yeah, that's great. And
Absolutely. And every guy in the field's got to know too that carrying a bipod round on a staff is heavy and it's tiresome after a while. And you don't have to do it anymore. It's so much easier on a day's work out in the field.
So is it that safety and productivity combo that really compelled you to upgrade from the RS2 Plus to the RS3?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We do a lot of water surveys as well, obviously with the boat, and now we can get water lines and not necessarily have to get our feet wet all the time. We can get water levels through the long grass just by angling it over, and structures and trees around the edges of the water courses. It really makes things a whole lot quicker and simpler, because we're not having to stand there and wait with the bipod or get the bipod and level it up, etc. So it's got a number of
benefits. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, that's okay. It's got a number of advantages in general workflows. So it's initially I wondered whether I needed it, but no, I don't think I'd live without it now. Not after using it.
Just briefly,
really
what's
changed
been your experience? What's been your experience comparing the tilt performance of the RS3 to non-tilt observations?
Absolutely no difference. But when you're talking the accuracy of it, it's absolutely none. We've tested it quite extensively, with base station cores, setting up our own grid of points, running it over, and just making sure that, from our standpoint, that the tilt function worked as advertised, and it does. It's fantastic. I've never, I don't think I've experienced something so good. It's millimeters difference really, when you're walking around the paddock with it.
Yeah, and I know, like in our conversations,
we've had it.
There I go, cutting you off again. Sorry. What were you saying?
No, sorry, you're right.
No, I was just going to say
we set it up on cores and base, and yeah. I'll talk forever. Don't worry about that. Just differences between having a base set up over a known point, static point, and osposing it or PPKing that particular position. We've tested it all against the tilt, and the difference between a collection and point is millimeters. It's just not even worth worrying about in a bathymetric or a airborne survey.
Yeah, and certainly I think just for anyone that might be naive that's in the audience, I don't really know. It's important to understand that with GNSS, it's not like you're going to get the same millimeter accuracy on every point every time for a single location. The fundamentals of the technology just don't really offer that level of precision. And when Ray's talking about nothing the other night, he was sharing with me that in that testing, his range was about 4 millimeters, which is really phenomenally tight. Certainly, yeah, I just wanted to clarify for any naive users that you're not going to necessarily see millimeter identical observations, but you will see that that's in common with, even if you just took all non-tilt corrected observations on a single point, you're still likely to see that small variation between observations. So thank you very much,
If I
Ray.
can, Alistair.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just wanted to sort of mention Emlid flow as well.
Oh yeah, sure.
We've utilized that against other forms of collection products, and Emlid flow on a tablet has just been magnificent in that aspect. We can have guys in the office getting the data before we even depart the site, and downloading and checking it off, or in turn uploading DXF files back through to us while we're in the field. So I think Emlid Flow is a magnificent addition to the whole Emlid product range.
Yep. So just for any viewers that aren't really familiar with that, Emlid Flow is the app that loads onto your iOS or Android smart device, and that's what you can use for field data collection inside Emlid's ecosystem if you're not using third-party software with that NMEA positioning string being broadcast from the receiver. However, Emlid also offer Emlid Flow 360, which is a cloud-based solution that you load as a browser as a web page on your browser, and it allows you to create projects, upload and download data from your projects directly onto your computer, and to synchronize those over the cloud with the Emlid Flow account on someone's phone. So it really does improve productivity in terms of getting data from the field to the office and vice versa, and allowing users to remotely create projects and send jobs out to field crews. So it is a fantastic capability. And beyond both of those is Emlid Flow Survey, which is a professional subscription-based enhancement to the Emlid Flow software, which exposes even more functionalities and capabilities. Thank you very much, Ray. So in summary, we've looked at these three different receivers, and we can see that the Emlid Reach RX is really just a rover. It doesn't contain a radio that will allow it to broadcast corrections. The Reach RS2 Plus and the Reach RS3 both contain radios that allow it to broadcast corrections. And in the case of the Reach RS3, it also contains a UHF receiver that allows it to receive corrections via UHF, like in that sort of 410 to 470 megahertz band. Further comparing them, only the Reach RS3 contains tilt compensation. In terms of versatility, the Reach RX is quite versatile for what it is at its price point and with its level of simplicity. But if you pay a little bit more, then you have that extra capability in terms of the receivers being able to act as a base and also being able to record raw data so that you can coordinate points using static surveys. And of course, with the Reach RS3, that versatility is extended with the addition of the UHF radio receiver and the tilt compensation capability. From an ease of use perspective, there's a small increase in additional, configuration required for the Reach RS2 or Reach RS3 to define if it's going to be a base or a rover, and that is all just defined inside the Emlid Flow app. So it's a soft switch to change the mode from base to rover for them, and to configure the base to broadcast via a particular pathway, and to ensure that the coordinates for that base are correct. And finally, the Reach RX and the Reach RS2 Plus both have a 16-hour battery life for RTK sessions, and the Reach RS3 offers an extra couple of hours of battery life. And as you can see, the Australian dollar pricing is listed there as well. Finally, before we get to the prize draw, I just want to invite everyone everyone in Australia to participate in access to a free loaner. So normally we rent out our Reach receivers to people that are interested in trialing them. And then we offer to refund that rental if people proceed to purchase within a couple of weeks. And the only time that wasn't the case was when a multinational decided to take 6 months to assess it, flew over their survey guru from their New Zealand operation who continued the assessment, and they went ahead and bought it anyway. However, for the viewers of this webinar that are in Australia, we'd like to extend an offer where we make the hardware available to you without any of that upfront investment. If you're curious and you'd like to know more, feel free to get in touch with one of our team members, Brad, who's our client relationship coordinator. And Brad will be able to set you up with a loaner device of your choice so that you can explore the capability. And if you need to explore the capacity for a base rover combo, we'd be happy to send you out a Reach RS2 Plus and a Reach RS3 as a rover, Reach RS2 Plus for the base. So that now brings us to the winners of the prize. So respecting that this is limited to Australian residents because of the complications around trying to get merch through customs in other countries, I'd like to announce that today's prize winners are, drum roll, just looking at what the team have pulled out of the hat. We've got Peter Muir and Andrew Blackmore. Congratulations, guys. We've got your contact details, and we will be in touch with you at the end of this webinar to arrange delivery of your prize. Thank you very much for joining us today. That now takes us to question time. So before we jump to question time, for people that would like to go before we get into the Q&A, I'd just like to thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. And we hope to see you again soon. This webinar will be recorded and published on the resources page of the Mangoesmapping website. And I believe it will also end up in the Mangoesmapping YouTube channel. So you can find this recording in those two locations. And of course, we really encourage you to reach out and get in touch if you'd like to know more or get your hands on some demo hardware. So what we're going to do now is to open up the chat channel and allow people to start to pose some questions. And Igor and I will do our very best. Look at this. Straight out of the box, we've got questions already. Well done, Tim, for being our first question. With tilt compensation on the RS3, would you need to be using a correction stream with a higher rate than, say, than 1 hertz, for example, 5 hertz or more?
That's a great question. Oh, and have we know, is the chat open now for everyone to ask their questions?
I hope it is, yes.
Okay.
And everyone should be able to broadcast their questions straight into the chat and everyone can see them.
Okay. So going back to the question. So actually with tilt compensation, it's important to run the rover at a higher update rate, but not necessarily the base station. So typically when we are getting corrections, we can use them without any loss in performance for, say, up to 10 seconds. So the rover can process 5 epochs, so 5 measurements. Say if we're making RTK at 5 hertz based on just 1 hertz data from the base station without any performance loss. And then the IMU in its turn is going to run at 400 times a second to interpolate between that and to actually even extrapolate the current position. So actually there is no benefit in running a higher update rate on the base station. And typically that would consume radio bandwidth or your cellular data and really don't bring any benefit. And in terms of the update on the rover, the RS3 is fixed and cannot go lower than 5 hertz. And we found that definitely, like, if you try to run it, not that it's possible, but like from engineering perspective, if you try to make tilt with a lower update rate, it's gonna really diminish the performance. So in 5 hertz is that sweet spot in terms of performance for tilt and for doing surveying.
So 5 hertz is the magic number when you're running IMU?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
On the rover.
Yeah. And so 5 hertz on the rover, 1 hertz on the base. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yep, awesome. I feel like everyone might be feeling a little bit shy, or they've all knocked off and gone to the pub, because we don't have any other questions. Just want to, we've still got a bunch of participants in the meeting. Does anyone have any other questions that they'd like to ask? If not, let me play devil's advocate and invite you all to submit ideas for our next webinar. What would you like to see our next webinar on? This is unscripted. My team might just kill me for asking this question. But what the heck? We've got you there. Aerial survey. Oh, James, you're not allowed to vote. There are other things that we can talk about, which are different pathways, like, when, might it be helpful to use, UHF versus LoRa versus NTRIP, and perhaps start to break down those different pathways for receiving or broadcasting corrections. Leica versus Emlid. That's a bit of a tricky one, Peter. In terms of getting access to data and not being able to, I think that it's a bit challenging for people like myself that might be perceived to have, or probably do have, legitimate conflicts of interest in terms of the fact that, we're bringing Emlid into Australia to focus on that topic. Very happy to do webinars on some of these other brand agnostic topics, however, in terms of looking at how to set up base and rovers and what the intricacies are in Emlid flow, things to look out for, and how to optimize your radio communications to maximize your range. What have we got here? Andy Rams.
And I think maybe I can speak a little bit about the sort of Emlid versus other brands without touching on any specific brands there. So what's important to know that, like, multiple comparisons have been done between Emlid and other brands, and they are available online from different dealers. And we have been compared to pretty much every brand out there over the past 5 years that the RS2 has been around. So, and I mean, the answer is, yeah, there is no difference. And I mean, like, if you compare any modern GNSS to any other modern GNSS, like, the technology is the same. So you're going to get the same result, unless there is something really, really wrong. So, like, it's just a GPS, I would say, at this point. Yeah. Like, it all works the same, but then it goes it boils down to the user experience, robustness, battery life, which is, like, really important, weight, the quality of software that comes with it, the quality of the team and the customer support that there is behind this product. So I think these are now kind of the key differentiators. And also, I mean, affordability and scalability. I mean, what we have really enabled is, like, for businesses to be able to scale their teams. Like, they're no longer constrained by the cost of the equipment or the complexity of training for kind of to get people up to speed on how to use it. So
we've got a couple of technical questions coming in now, Igor.
Yeah.
So there's a question there from Andy about, is using 2 RS3s as a base survey, or is it better to recommend an RS2 Plus as a base and RS3 only as a rover?
So in terms of being a base, the RS3 is just as good as an RS2 Plus and vice versa. So it really depends on your needs. I think if sometimes you want to run them as 2 rovers from an NTRIP, then it really makes sense to invest that extra few hundred into a second RS3. If you're always just running them as a base and the rover and they're fixed roles, then yeah, maybe there is no benefit in having the second RS3. What do you think, Al?
Yeah, that's consistent with the advice that I've been giving people that have been inquiring, privately to us via email and etc. I think if you have a requirement to need to potentially scale in the future, you can buy, 2 RS3s now and have that flexibility to take those and connect them to Emlid caster or to another external N-trip source and use them both as rovers. And in the future, buy some RS2 pluses, and then you've got 2 base rover combos, and you've got the RS2 plus as the base and the RS3 as the rover. But yeah, my default advice to people is if you don't need to do that and you think you're only ever going to buy one base and rover kit, and you're only going to use your base as a base and not sometimes also as a second rover, save the money. The RS2 Plus is a proven product. And, when I'll just briefly go into this anecdote sort of proven product, and you can shake your head and laugh because you were the person that I hit up every time I got into panic. When the RS2 was released, suspiciously cheap hardware, proven itself over and over again now. But early on, and I still see this with particularly conservative customers that have experience with GNSS hardware previously, when something doesn't work, they just sort of leap to, it must be the hardware because it's so cheap. And I'm going, no, there's something that's happening in your setup that's stopping you from getting a fix, or that's impacting on the stability of your fix. There's something in there, it's going to be air data rate on the radio, or their frequency's out by 0.1 of a megahertz, or there's something that, they haven't turned on enough constellations, something in there that's stopping them from getting the result that we'd all expect. And that's it. Like, I know now, I'm so confident with this gear. When people ring us and go, hey, I've got a problem, I know it's not the hardware. I know it's just a case of working through with them and making sure that we give them the support and help them to understand how to correctly configure them, and we get them out of trouble every time. So I can offer that reassurance to people. This stuff absolutely works, and we certainly stand behind it. Okay, that's that one. Tim asks about high gain antennas. I'm going to take that as a suggestion for a future webinar topic. We've also got a question from Peter Muir in relation to constellations supported. So with the Reach RS2, well, in fact, all 3 of these products, they support GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, and Beidou. So all 4 of the major constellations are supported. Tim's got a question on base shift feature, in particular when using it multiple times on the same project. So I'm going to go back and revisit the same site on different days, and I want to have the most stable and precise alignment of my points. I'm now sort of reading between the lines of Tim's question here, between my different site visits. So I can just speak to this from my own perspective, where we've needed to access a benchmark that's remote. We will set up our base and we will go and access that remote benchmark to apply that base shift feature. And it does create some challenges, but what you can then do is use that to create a more local benchmark that you continue to set up on, so that you've got stability in your data collections between different days. Certainly that's the approach that we've adopted. Igor, have you got any feedback on that?
Yeah, so I think that's sort of the use case which Tim is asking about is exactly what we have designed this feature for. It's like when you're coming multiple days into the same spot, and you want to make sure that your surveys are consistent, even if you just sort of place your base station somewhere where it determines its position by itself in single mode or in an autonomous GNSS mode, and starts broadcasting corrections, and you want to correct that position relative to a benchmark. You just walk up to a benchmark, you select base shift, key in the position of the benchmark, and like boom, everything is shifted and accurate. And that's exactly what we designed this feature for. There are other use cases where I would say localization or site calibration would be more appropriate. So don't try to use base shift over there if you need to tie into local control and you have unknown parameters of a coordinate systems, because this could lead to inaccuracies. But if you're just correcting the variance in base station positions over multiple site visits, then yeah, base shift is really convenient for that.
Mm-hmm. It's also pretty handy if you want to stash your base somewhere, not on the side of a road, neighborhood where you're not convinced it's going to still be there when you come back. So it allows you to, look, I find it really helpful in terms of where I live up in far north Queensland, in Herberton. For the Australians in the audience, there's been a lot of wildfires up there recently. water bombing at the end of my street and all of that. But so lots of hills, lots of forest, and sometimes those benchmarks are in the roads that are often running up the valleys. And so you really want to get your base somewhere a bit more elevated to propagate that correction to the areas that you need to do your survey. So using that base shift feature allows us to set our base up somewhere higher and then to take our rover and go and occupy a benchmark to be able to apply that feature to our project. So we're running out of questions, and we're kind of running out of time too. If I don't see any more questions lob in the next moment or two, I'm going to just take this opportunity to thank everyone for joining us today. It's been another great chat with you, Igor. Wish you all the best for the remainder of your day, which has really only just begun. I hope you find sunshine when you step outside and not just darkness and rain.
I sure hope so.
To everyone else, we really appreciate your interest in the conversation today. We thank you for your time and look forward to communicating with you whenever you'd like to get in touch with us. But thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. It was great.
Farewell. See you next time, Igor.
See